Hello and welcome back to our weekly market recap. I'm with Rich.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm Knight. Let's get to it. So this past week, we saw the market up 2.16%, continuing the rise that we saw last week. We're up 10.05% year to date. We're up 5.88% from the highs that we saw back in February. And then we're up 60.24% from the lows of the COVID virus that we saw in March. So this week, basically, we have two polar news articles going against one another. But the first one is Pfizer's vaccine that they came out with a 90% efficacy, which was a lot higher than what anyone was really expecting in the marketplace. And then the other more negative news that is counteracting that is new infection rate highs. I believe today we just eclipsed 150,000 new COVID cases. So we have those two big newsworthy bits of information that are kind of going against one of another. So Rich, do you want to talk about the new infection rate highs that we saw today?
Yeah, what we're looking at is very high infection rates. Basically what Fauci had predicted earlier, that if we didn't start getting things under control last month, that we were going to start to see much higher numbers come November, December. And once again, he was right.
Yeah, so what impact does that have on us? Well, really, the points of information I've heard a lot, oh, well, the death rate is, going down. I think it's down 20 to 30%. That's great, don't get me wrong. But if all of a sudden the infection rate is rising 200%, really matter if the death rate is dropped 30% if we're infecting 3 times as many people. But really, how does that affect the market? What it's going to come down to is ICU beds. We're having less people go into the hospitals compared to what we saw back in March, due to the treatment taking, instead of 12 days, now it only takes 6 days with remdesivir. But as soon as we have higher infections and more people going, as soon as those ICU beds go down, we're going to have to shut down again. It's almost a no-brainer.
And that's the issue that Wall Street is struggling with. It really isn't so much the direct effect of COVID-19, but is it going to lead to a shutdown? And where is it going to lead to shutdown? And are the shutdowns going to be more targeted, or is it going to be a general shutdown such as what we had 6-7 months ago? If it's very targeted, certain cities like Chicago, where we're having 15,000 cases a day, or in El Paso, where they're having very large, then we're not going to see much of a reaction from the stock market. But if we have a major shutdown, or if people start to panic and start buying less and start traveling less, and we're going to see that the stock market will take notice. Remember, even though the US has taken a different path than Europe, we're also seeing a surge in Europe. Matter of fact, the only place we're not seeing a surge is in China. And that is actually sort of interesting for me, because their economic activity seems to be growing.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot to unpack there. Maybe we can take a different video. But for what's important in this moment is the COVID cases that we see, it repeats the same cycle. It's a 3-month cycle. Infections start going up dramatically to the point where now some sort of behavior changes. Then it start to plateau and even go down. And then we start to loosen up and the curve starts going back up again. That's the same thing that we've seen happen twice now before. And this is the 3rd time repeating that pattern. So my expectation for this time is we're going to continue to see a spike in cases, probably through Thanksgiving up until likely the first week of December. What's going to happen? We're then going to have some new change in behavior. Either masks are mandated or there will be more shutdowns. to which point we'll start to see a lowering of the curve and we'll start seeing the infection rates go down in the next month or two, hopefully to the point that the vaccine is out. So let's transition to what Pfizer had in that vaccine. What I find most important to speak about is the market was expecting anywhere from a 50 to 70% efficacy vaccine. That was the standard. And all of a sudden, Pfizer comes out and says, we have a 90% effective vaccine, almost unheard of in the vaccine realm. And so I think that just shows a lot of benefits that we might have not been expecting before. If people actually get the vaccines and we can distribute it, we might be able to open up much sooner and much more effectively than if we were only having a 50% effective vaccine.
Yes, one of the issues though with the vaccine and with the 90% piece is that it was with 97 people out of many thousands. So they're still gathering more and more data, but those numbers, as Knight said, are just off the charts for what you would expect at this stage. And that's great news. We also don't know how long the antibodies stay. There's a possibility it will only last a year, sort of like the flu vaccine.
Rich, I'm glad you mentioned that and something that I'm very curious about and looking forward to is Moderna coming out with their numbers. Because what we had in this vaccine front is, and I know way more about vaccines than I ever knew before, but Moderna and Pfizer both used an mRNA vaccine, which has actually never been used in this way before. And so they're kind of a special first-time vaccine, but they're similar. So if Moderna comes out and their vaccine is also 90% effective, then that just gives more confidence, one, to their vaccine and to Pfizer's vaccine. However, like you said, with that 97-person study, if Moderna comes out and says, look, we only have a 50 or 60% efficacy vaccine, all of a sudden it starts to question, well, did Pfizer just get good numbers or not? Either way, Moderna, they've collected all the data. Now it's just when are they going to release it? They said they'd release it by the end of November. I'm hoping that they actually release it within the next week and we'll be able to see. But that, for me, that's one of the really big things that I'm looking at is these are brand new vaccines that we've never seen before. But if both of them are saying positive results, I think there's a good chance that the data could be true.
Absolutely. Really good points, Knight.
So those are really the two biggest polar opposites. Yeah, we're right now, COVID is spreading worse than we've ever seen, but we also have a greater possibility for the next phase of this and moving through to opening. So Rich, as an investor right now with the portfolios in the midst of all this, what's the moves to do?
Well, I think it's like everything else. I think we have everybody well balanced for the current situation. We've always looked at it as a long-term investment. I wouldn't make changes currently. What we're seeing is a bit of a rotation in the market as things have changed the last few days as the vaccine seemed to be coming out. Dow stocks, stocks related to entertainment, travel, hotels, hospitality that weren't doing well before shot up. And some of the high-tech ones that did very well because of the shutdown and people working at home dropped. But today we had just the opposite happen. So I'm figuring that it's best to stay the ship. We have your portfolio set up for both situations to do well, and I wouldn't make changes.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I think right now the most important thing is trying to navigate through this and staying safe. Thanksgiving is going to be a huge time that it's going to either turn the corner in potentially spreading a lot more in the virus, or we're going to start to see a change in behavior and a dip in cases. Either way, we hope that you all are staying safe. As always, we're here to support you. Your money's here to support you, and we'll see you again next week.